Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast. And today we're going to talk about mortgages, mortgage notes, and investing. And so today I've got Chris Seveney here. And he has Seveney Investments, and he's been a real estate professional for more than 20 years, developed over $750 million in real estate. As the son of a lifelong educator, you now want to share note investing and your knowledge of that for first position performing and non-performing notes. So you have a master's or getting your master's degree from Georgetown University, been able to build your investment portfolio to over $5 million for notes and your real estate portfolio to over $7 million. Lots more for us to talk about, but thanks for coming on the show, Chris. So excited to have you.
Yeah, excited to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me. I've been investing in the mortgage note space for the last 5 years. As you mentioned, I've been in real estate and construction development for over 20 years. And the one quick little story I'll say about how I got into notes is I stumbled upon them, and I was actually upset at the time because I had been in real estate for over 15 years at the time and never knew mortgage note investing was around. And then I got heavily involved in it because of the ability to be able to do it from anywhere in the world at any point in time. And I started doing it. And one of the things I wanted to do is start sharing a lot of my knowledge that I get from that and, so forth. And we launched podcasts as well that at the end I can tell people about from that perspective.
Yeah, the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. Yeah, so, one of the things that I like to share with people, we talk about building wealth, gaining, time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. And another big part of that is I want to share where people have come from, because what I want to have happen is, there's so much opportunity in the real estate industry. I want somebody to say, based on my skill set or knowledge, like maybe I haven't quite found my fit, but now I heard Chris's episode and Chris's background, that really clicked for me and that makes sense. So why don't you just share a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you're at today, to maybe inspire somebody who's listening to say, yeah, that path makes sense. I like that.
So the first thing I'll tell people about inspiration is it does not matter how old you are. I'm 46 years old. I'll be 47 later this year. And I didn't start investing in my own portfolio till about 2013. And several reasons why. I do come from, I had a civil engineering degree out of college. I graduated in the late 90s, and I was working for large general contractors, doing a lot of commercial projects. And anyone who's ever been in that business, especially back in the 90s, 2000s, when the economy was good, is you were working at least 60 hours a day. It was expected to work Saturdays. Mm-hmm. The work-life balance back then compared to now is significantly different. And it also kind of handcuffed you where you weren't really had the time or the energy to want to do things on your own, especially if you're working that many hours, family time and everything else. It truly was almost impossible. So in 2008, I'll share a story about where I was at in my life was, I was a week after Lehman Brothers collapsed. I'd switched jobs a year prior because I was overstressed and wanted to work closer to home. So I took a new job with a different developer. And a week after Lehman Brothers occurred, the crash, I walk into the office on a Monday morning. I was usually the first one there, but all the executives were there. So I'm like, what's going on? Their cars were there, but they weren't there. And all of a sudden they come in at like 9:15 and come in my office, close my door and say, essentially, hey, look, about 2/3 of the office is getting laid off today. You're not one of them, but here's a contract that basically extends your employment till Thanksgiving, essentially, to finish up your projects and then basically go on your way. And there's a potential it could be extended, but they never told you like how long. Mm-hmm. And for people around that time, the market kept crashing. And about 2 weeks later, my wife at the time came to me and said she wanted a divorce. So kind of world's crashing down.
Yeah.
Literally that December 1st, I hopped in the car. I went back to my old company, but drove down to DC and started from there. Since that time, I've gotten remarried. I have 2 wonderful kids. And like I said, in 2013, we built our primary residence. And then we had a lot of equity based on the time we built it. And my boss at the time, I was working for a different developer at Switch Jobs, had rentals in San Diego. And he asked me how many rentals I have. And I said, none. He's like, dude, how are you going to retire? Like, you need to get into real estate investing. So he sparked my interest. And I know I'm kind of long story short, I started buying some rentals and doing fix and basically buy and hold rentals where we'd renovate them. But after 2 or 3 of them with a wife and kids, that kind of got squashed because our weekends were tied up, and I'm in the Washington, D.C. area where it's very competitive. So I ended up stumbling upon note investing because you can do that. Literally, I do it at like 10 o'clock at night or like 6 o'clock in the morning. You can do it anywhere as long as you have a computer and anytime during the day. I know there's awesome. A lot there.
Yeah, no, it is. And because we've had folks on in the past where I remember an episode we did very early on where he's an IT guy and he's like, I noticed that all the executives in my company had a rental portfolio and I've got to get started. I've got to do something. And so he started with some short-term rentals. He actually happens to be in San Diego now doing short-term rentals. But that's the thing is, who you're around matters. And in a case like this, somebody helped inspire you and kind of push you to get started in that. So let's talk about just kind of that beginning piece there. So you took the equity that you had and you found, now were the properties in the DC area?
Yeah, there are 2 properties in the DC area, and they're actually condos. And the reason why I wanted condos, and most people are like, whoa, stay away from condos, was I wanted the least amount of maintenance possible. And we literally went in, we replaced all the electrical in these units and just completely renovate them. So I don't have to spend $100 on an electrician to come fix an outlet or whatever the case may be. So the nice thing with the condos is I didn't have to worry about anything on the outside. I know I was paying condo fees, but that peace of mind, because the busy lifestyle we had, I was willing to pay that price for the peace of mind.
We had a townhouse as our first, no, it'd be our second rental. And I enjoyed that because I don't have to worry about snow shoveling, mowing the lawn. It was newish construction at the time. So, the siding, the roof, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I think I would get a call maybe once a year, maybe every 18 months of, water heater or furnace or something like that. But there was no maintenance. So I was able to self-manage that. So there is a piece. Yeah, you're paying the price, but you may have paid that to a property manager. You may have paid that to maintenance crew.
Yep. So after that, like I said, when we really couldn't scale anymore because of cost, but also timing. I mean, if you didn't look at a property that day, like the market today is insane. It's almost always been like that the last 7 years here in DC. Because especially if certain areas or neighborhoods that people want to be in. So I stumbled upon on the website BiggerPockets mortgage note investing. And I was like, what is this? And I'm like, wait a second, you can actually buy somebody's mortgage that was originated at a bank and pay it at a discount and basically, don't have to worry about the tenant, don't have to worry, or the borrower, calling you to fix a toilet, fix a roof leak. Because, if you own a house, and something happens, you don't call your lender. It's like, it's your house. All you're doing is collecting those payments, assuming that they're getting paid. And that's where there's the difference of there's performing notes, which, people pay on a constant stream. And then there's non-performing, which the one thing I'll mention that blows people's mind is most people think, oh, if I miss one mortgage payment, oh my God, they're going to come throw me out of my house. We have borrowers who haven't paid in 3, 5, 6, 7 years, haven't made a mortgage payment. So when we talk about distressed, we're talking about serious delinquency. And our goal throughout this whole process is always to try and keep them in their home. For the social good. I mean, the name of my podcast, Good Deeds, is pun on words because mortgage is has a deed attached to it. But I mean, that's our philosophy and it's what we've been doing. And it's a business that's actually very scalable if you have systems in place. And that's one of the things, any real estate business, if you put good systems in place, and I'm a civil engineer, not an IT guy, but I'm just very structured on everything. And that is something that allows people to be very successful in that space.
How did you move from, I'm listening to the podcast to now I'm in the game?
So it was typical engineer analysis paralysis. I did about 6 months of studying. I built like this crazy financial calculator that took me I probably put like over 100+ hours into it, which was so overkill, but I wanted to make sure I covered every single base. And I look back now, and because I've looked at so many assets, I don't even kind of need to use it anymore. It's more of a reference, but it allowed me to think a lot about that process. So after about 6 months of studying, I finally pulled the trigger, and I took money from my solo 401k. So I took my own money from my own retirement account, which was a whole nother animal that I never knew when you left a company, that you can actually roll it into an IRA or manage it yourself. The only options they ever tell you is keep it or move it to your new company. So I took, it was probably like 25 grand. It wasn't a lot. And again, the numbers might fluctuate up or down a few $1,000s. I can't remember the exact number, but roughly around 25,000 to buy these 4 loans. And one of them was performing, one of them was actually in bankruptcy, which they were paying in bankruptcy, and 2 of them were non-performing, but they had very low balances. So the balances on these loans may have been like 10 to 15,000, but the house values were like 100,000. So the houses had equity. So from a risk perspective, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen is basically you get them on a repayment plan, or if they just completely ignore you and you're foreclosed, you would get paid off that balance at foreclosure. So I viewed it as a very low risk, type of investment. So I would kind of make sure I wouldn't lose money or my initial investment.
Okay, so then just to clarify, and for somebody that may not be tracking this, you're basically taking the 4 loans that were on the 4 properties. You're saying, hey, instead of XYZ bank or XYZ lender having the mortgage on that, you're buying them out, and now you own that. And so then, if the property goes into foreclosure, they sell it, now they cut a check to you versus where they would cut a check to the bank. But because there's equity there, the likelihood of getting your money back is strong. Yeah,
correct. So think of, you're just stepping, and this is what blows everyone's mind. I'll just use Wells Fargo. No association with them. I do have an account with them, but so Wells Fargo might be like, okay, they own the loan, so you're paying Wells Fargo. And also Wells Fargo will do an assignment. Most people probably have had this happen in the past, where where you send your payments might get changed or something. Basically, your loan is probably getting sold from one bank to the other. So Wells Fargo might sell it to PNC. PNC might sell it to Truist, or one of these other banks. But if they see that there's a potential for any risk on it, that sometimes will make its way to Wall Street, which will go into a securitized, and then it might work its way down. Like anything, it funnels down to Main Street. So eventually I'm just stepping in the place of, simple example, Wells Fargo. So instead of basically you cutting a check to Wells Fargo every month, you're actually cutting a check to me. And the questions people always ask are, why would you buy something that they're not paying on? And why would a bank sell? So the answer to the first question is because you're buying at a significant discount. If somebody owes $20,000, you're not paying $20,000 for that note. You could be paying anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, depending on the state and many different factors. So, but by buying at a discount, it allows you more negotiation to work a new payment plan out with that borrower, because your amount of skin in the game is less. The other is why banks sell. And when you look at loans or hedge funds, as I'll use more, are the ones we buy from, it costs the same amount of money to manage a loan on $1 million house, $1 million loan, as it does a $20,000 loan. What do you think the bank's are going to pay more attention to? And look at every employer in the United States today, and what is their biggest problem? They can't find enough people. So a lot of these loans almost get forced at, we don't have time to manage them. and it's such a low balance, why we bother with it? It's going to cost us more money to manage it than basically if we sell it at a discount and just take the money up front.
So they're just essentially just cashing out, right? Like,
Yeah, they're just cashing out.
Let's just say, just for random numbers, hey, it's going to cost us $10,000 to figure this out or manage it or deal with the headache. Hey, Chris, why don't you just take it for 5? And now I can be done with it. And at least I got something for it.
Yeah, that's a lot of the mindset, and from a lot of the people that, we buy from, because what also happens is these large institutions, they're buying tens of thousands of loans. And they break them up. They'll break them into what's called tranches, buckets. And they're like, okay, here's the top bucket. These are the ones we really want, but we were forced to buy all of these. So these aren't our cup of tea. And maybe it's a certain state they don't like. They'll carve those out and then they sell them off. And then they'll make money typically when they sell them because they were at the top of the food chain. But then also they'll keep the ones that they want at the top of the food chain. And like I said, spin off the other ones. It's no different than, say, you're buying a portfolio of rentals from one person and 7 of them were one town and the 8th one was in another town. It was a little further away than your property manager wanted to go. You're like, you know what? Because I'm getting such a great deal, I'll buy it, but then I'm just going to turn around and sell it to somebody. It's the same theory.
Yeah. So then what happens when you acquired those? Are you calling up the homeowner and saying, hey, I'm this guy, Chris. I've now got the mortgage here. Let's talk. How does that process work?
Yeah, hell no, first off. And the reason I say that is, the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and all RESPA and all the laws, like when you go to get a mortgage, you sign like 4,000 pieces of paper, all the disclosures and so forth. This industry is heavily regulated. And that's one of the, I don't want to say downsides, but something to be aware of is you really got to know the rules. So the first rule in note investing is never service your own loans, which is never collect the payments, never call the borrowers. Now, if they reach out to you because they know you own the loan, that's, of course you can have a conversation with them, but you pay a company to collect those payments. Typically costs, call it $25 a month per loan, but they're making the phone calls, they're sending the monthly statements, they're applying when a payment comes in, the principal versus the interest on the loan, they're sending out the 1098s to the borrowers. They handle that whole process. Now, I'm a big fan of working on your business. I mean, not in your business. So why do you want to be sending out monthly statements? And then if somebody's late, you have to send a late notice, because if you don't, it's a violation that you can get fined every time you don't do it. So, in the software to use that stuff, definitely
leverage the people that have gone before you and done that.
Yes.
So then how does that work on the back end? So they essentially, now you're hiring them, they service the loan, and then how does your money come back to you? Do they every month or quarter, or how does that?
Yep. Pretty much every month. The servicer, I've got right now a little over 250 loans under management, and I have them between 3 different servicers right now. Because of like different states, I like different ones in different areas. But yeah, every week they take the remittance, the payments from the prior week. They'll send me like, here are your payments from last week, and just deposit it right into my bank account. And I can log in and see like, which borrower paid, which one didn't. Very similar to, again, people who have rental portfolios. If you got 10 doors and use like Appfolio, one of those things, you can log in and say, okay, who's paid, who hasn't paid. And then, they get paid, and then they just send me the money back through to me.
How have you strategically then, what have you learned from, I bought these first 4 to now you're up to 250? How are you kind of strategically improving as you go?
Oh, we don't have time for this, but
in 5 minutes or
I will say, a lot of growing pains, a lot of lessons learned. And that's one of the things why I educate people is, hey, I can share with you the mistakes I made to kind of have you leap forward and jump over those. This business is very different than conventional real estate. Like in your market, it's probably cutthroat for real estate. In note investing, because most people invest across the country, I've got people I know who do this, and we like share information back and forth, or I have a deal, I'm not interested. It's, there's a term that goes around called co-opetition, not competition, because there's so many assets typically that you can't take them all down. Compared to, if you're I think you're in San Diego, it's like, hey, a deal comes up, people are just scratching, chomping it to get it on a real estate deal. But the biggest takeaway I would tell from scaling perspective is choose your right partners. Don't go cheap. And that's where I made mistakes in the past, where I'd have a company do something and it's like a one-man show. And all of a sudden that one-man show is a no-man show. So then all of a sudden I spent thousands of dollars on them. And then all of a sudden they're not providing the service I need. So then I have to flip and start all over again. And not only is it the cost, but it's the time. And that time, again, I go back to, I have to spend now on that, in my business versus on my business. So that would be the biggest thing I tell people is build a kick butt team around you that knows what they're doing. And basically you still need to manage them, but it's I'll say a light management, not heavy management.
Mm-hmm. And how many hours per week are you working on this?
Typically, because I have systems and I have somebody who helps me as well. But before probably about 30. So I do have a full-time job. I probably spend a good 30 hours a week on this as well. It would be a lot more, but I will say I have spent probably a little over $50,000 in software. To basically, I bought software that the servicing companies use that is very handy to manage. It takes the place of probably 2 employees. So it was actually cost savings. Now people are like, well, yeah, I get started. Nobody has 50,000 of these software. I didn't start with that. I started with Excel. And what I did is every time I'd make profits, those profits would just go back to get reinvested. I'd reinvest in the company. I reinvest in the systems to scale, because what happens is you get to a point where you get stuck in regard to, okay, I'm in this spot. In order to make that leap, I need to spend X amount of dollars. And it's like, do I spend that much money? Because it's considerable money. And that 50,000 was over time. The first bucket was like 12,000. Then I spent 10 on an upgrade and, over time. But that's the conundrum, because people get caught kind of in that middle space. And what I would tell people is, save up for it, and it's worth taking that leap. Take your time to get there, but then you take that leap, and then it's kind of like moving the needle that, okay, you're kind of, I'll say, like, I'll use the federal government as an example, the pay scales they have and stuff, like you get caught in somebody, in between like this bracket, if you can make that leap, then you reset your floor. And by resetting your floor, it can lead to continued growth, and it'll be for your business. It's a hard decision. It's a scary decision. And it's a risky decision, but everyone I talk to, typically after you've been doing it for a few years and you know what you're doing, it pays off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We often talk about, in the real estate business, like breaking through a ceiling of achievement. Like you've hit that plateau, and to go from this level to this level, I've got to do something different. Otherwise, you're just going to continue on that plateau.
I'm going to steal that, breaking through the ceiling of achievement. Yeah, I'm writing that down and stealing that.
Awesome. I didn't come up with the phrase, so I don't need to take credit for it. But where do you plan on taking the business from here? So you're up to 5 million, right?
Yeah, it's actually grown even since then. It's probably doubled since that time.
Okay.
Right now, we are working on even scaling that significantly greater to greater lengths. We're in the process of starting to scale with additional team members to bring on board. And I'm a big proponent of, slow growth, in the sense of, just don't scale and then figure it out later. I've been master planning since 2020. I did finish my master's at Georgetown, and my thesis was actually on raising significant money for a fund to invest in mortgage notes. So I wrote my thesis, which was my basically business plan that I was just going to take and implement at a later date. So that's what I'm focused on right now, is looking to eventually scale this to a level where we're going to build out a staff of 5 or 6 employees, and really bring on a team of experts, and to really focus and manage to allow for the growth we're looking for.
And then at some point, do you feel that you're going to kind of kick the day job and go jump in on this full time, or do you always feel like you're going to be doing both buckets?
I'd love to, but also hopefully nobody from my day job listens to this episode. But no, eventually.
We don't have a large Massachusetts contingency of our listeners. So
yeah. So, but no, joking aside. Yeah, I mean, eventually, yes, it's my passion. But what I do within my full-time jobs world of real estate construction development, I love that too. So I'm fortunate where I'm not in a position where I'm one of those people like, oh my God, I hate my day job. I dread going going to it every day. Just please, Calgon, take me away. If you remember those commercials, you might be too young for those, but older listeners know what I'm talking about. So eventually, yeah, I mean, that's the master plan on things. When that occurs is still something that I need to map out and develop. And like anything in life, whatever you plan, make sure you have a plan A, B, and C, because life always throws you a curveball.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it also speaks to the leverage that you've built through software systems and other things where you can do both. I mean, it's taking time on both ends, and yet at the same time, you're able to do both because you've invested in systems. And that's where, we talk about real estate leverage freedom. You couldn't do it without the leverage, and the leverage for you is a lot of computer software and IT stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll mention too is, we've got a portfolio of notes that, say there's 250 of them, and the average price was 40 grand. So it's $10 million. Now, if we want to stay at 250, but then buy $80,000 on average, we just doubled our numbers by we're still, and it goes back to that earlier comment, we're still managing the same amount of assets in the same portfolio, essentially. It's just the value of them increased. I'd say like buying a house in Arizona that you have as a rental compared to San Diego. San Diego, you're probably paying 4 times that price, but it's still one house. It's very similar notes where, okay, I can buy lower value ones, but then as I grow to scale, I can start replacing those with the higher value ones that allow for the exponential growth.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover here, and it was good to get an entry level discussion here on what it takes, because I know listeners would be curious to hear, how can I do that, and how can you do it while still keeping your day job? So congratulations for what you've been able to build and how that's grown.
Thank you, Mike. And it's been a pleasure also coming on today. And if people are interested in finding out more information about me, they can email me at Chris at the number 7, the letter E, then the word investments.com. If you're interested in more about note investing, you can listen to the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast as well. And our website is 7E, the number 7, the letter E, investments.com to check out what we've got going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Chris, and educating our listeners on notes and how that works. I certainly learned a lot and appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.